history of this great country, I give you Joe Biden.
Hey, Pat, I like this guy. Hey, folks, you know, it says Vermonters love Joe. You should know one thing you probably don't know, how much I love Vermont. I gotta tell you, I wasn't going to mention this, but as they say, used to say in the Senate, a point of personal privilege. I got elected as a 29-year-old kid in 1972. I literally was not old enough to be sworn in on the day I was elected. I had to wait 17 days to be literally eligible. At the same time of my election and getting sworn in, my wife was Christmas shopping with my 3 children and was in an accident, and my wife and my daughter died, and my 2 sons were very badly injured. And I had no intention of going to the Senate at that time. I don't remember saying it, but I said the state can get another senator, but my kids can't get another dad. And a group of senators who I'm forever indebted to, starting with a fellow named Mike Mansfield and Ted Kennedy and Hubert Humphrey and a guy named Tom Eagleton and a few others, Fritz Hollings, they came to me and said, look, just come for 6 months. Just come for 6 months. They knew me better than I knew. They knew if they got me engaged, it would be the best thing for me. And I said, okay, 6 months. But I got in the car with my brother Jim, and please don't be offended, Burlington, but I drove to Rutland. And I made an offer on a house in Rutland because I wanted to move to Vermont. I wanted to leave Delaware and put everything behind me. And my dad, who didn't spend a lot of time giving advice, he gave me one very good piece of advice. He said, look, Joe, you want to do that, that's good. He said, when you're in the middle of a crisis like this, the best thing to do is not make a decision. If you still feel that way at the end of the summer, he said, I'll get in the car and go with you. And I think you should go. Well, it turned out my whole life changed around. But I just always tell that story to Pat Leahy because I might have been running against Pat Leahy. And he would have beat me like a drum. First time, I got a call end of my second year in the Senate, Bernie, from a guy named Leahy. Would I come to Burlington, Vermont and campaign for him? He was running for the Senate. Democrats weren't used to winning in the Senate in this state. And so I came up. Pat was ahead by 20 points before I got there, and he ended up barely winning, but he won. Then, my old friend Marcel and my closest friends, it's so good to see you guys. And Bernie, I tell you what, Bernie is the conscience of the United States. Who was my administrative assistant for years, and I think made a heck of a mark in 2 years in the Senate. I said to him, okay, Ted, you've been there 2 years. Of all the people you work with, who do you like best? He said, Bernie Sanders. This guy knows talent, man. And Peter, it's great to see you, and I want to thank you not only for all the good work you've done in the economy, but for your good work in foreign policy. Peter and I work together. Peter came down to see me. We're working on matters related to the Middle East, a few other things. Peter, you're the real deal. Thank you very much. Let me tell you something. He needs me like he needs another hole in his head. You guys are doing just fine, but it's so exciting to be back in Vermont. You know, I'm here not only for Peter, but I'm here with the basic message, folks. To paraphrase Samuel Clemens, the reports of the demise of the Democratic Party are premature. All the funders have for us out there. Let me tell you what I see, and I've now been into over 110 races. I've had the great privilege of being all over the country. Let me tell you what I think this election is about. And it's presumptuous of me to tell you what it's about in Vermont, but I think Vermont is no different than what's at stake in this election. Peter talked about 10,000 Vermonters having lost their job. Well, tens of millions of people had lost their jobs. My dad, who the ladies knew pretty well, used to have an expression, he's a proud, decent man. He said, Joey, remember one thing, a job's, and I mean this sincerely, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about dignity. It's about respect. It's about being able to turn to your child and say, honey, it's going to be okay. It's about being able to look at your husband or wife and say, we're going to make it. It's not about, like a lot of Vermonters tonight, and millions of Americans going to bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering whether or not I'm going to be able to be in this house 6 months from now. Whether or not I'm going to have my job, or going to be shipped overseas. What's going to happen to me? The anxiety on the part of the American people is real. They're angry, and they have every reason to be angry. As I go around America and see what the policy of the Bush administration and the Republicans have done, and I'm not being political, this is factual. Factual. I see what it's done to hard working, decent, middle-class people who played by the rules, did everything they were supposed to do. We woke up one morning never having missed a mortgage payment and found out because of a subprime mortgage that some guy in Wall Street thought up, all of a sudden going up, belly up on the block around the corner, all of a sudden their house is worth less than it was before. And more go under. And they find that now they owe more on their house than in fact, the house is worth. And they never missed a payment. And they're angry. As I said, I don't blame them for being angry. I'm angry too. As the President says, I don't bring this up to relitigate it. I bring this up so we don't relive it. So we don't have to go back to it. Because, ladies and gentlemen, that's what these guys want to do. All I'm going to say is going to mirror what Peter said. I'll tell you what this election is about nationwide, and it's the same thing here in Vermont. This election is about the competing visions that we have and the other party has for America, and how to move America forward in the 21st century. How to build a stronger, more stable middle class. How to give every kid a fighting chance. How to preserve our security without compromising our personal freedoms. Look, I understand Peter's opponent calls himself a George W. Bush Republican. Well, let me tell you something, folks. Let's just take a look at what that type of Republican did. That type of Republican strongly pushed for 8 years, and their counterparts continue to push to privatize Social Security. And I know we use that phrase all the time, but just think what would have happened to your mothers and fathers had they succeeded, and that trillions of dollars have been put in the stock market, that money relied upon by the people now living on Social Security. Imagine what would have happened, literally, not figuratively. To sacrifice personal freedom in the name of security is what they did. They declared to the world, you are either with us or you are against us. We went from being the most beloved nation in the world, literally according to the Pew Research Foundation, to one of the least respected nations in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, and look at what they did to us economically. On the Republican Party's watch, they literally let our infrastructure crumble. They made virtually no investment. They failed to invest in research and development, unlike even previous Republican administrations had done. They did not spend much time trying to find new cures for diseases. We spend $100 billion a year just to treat cancer. A year. Yet it wasn't until we came to office that we've gone from looking at the DNA of 2 cancers to 20 that affect over 100 million people. If we just find a cure for 2 of them, not only will we change people's lives, but we'll save the nation billions of dollars. Folks, this is not your father's Republican Party. This is not George Aiken's. I served with George Aiken. This is not George Aiken's Republican Party. This is a different group of people. They did nothing to invest in cleaner forms of energy, continue to rely upon the oligarchs of oil, and continue to say the answer lays off the shores of Delaware and in the Gulf of Mexico and off the shore of California, even if every single drop of it were able to be taken up safely, it would not do us 2 years worth of good. They watched the middle class. They watched the middle class begin to shrink. From the time Bush became president until the time his presidency ended, middle class income actually shrank 5%, while productivity increased 20%, and while for the first time since the Depression, 1% of the American people control over 24% of America's wealth. That never happened since the Great Depression, before the Great Depression. Ladies and gentlemen, how many of you are students here at this great university? Even at a great state university like this, and I like to think mine as well as a great university, University of Delaware, middle-class families are getting priced out of college with virtually no help coming from these guys. The overall result is that we slipped to 14th in the world in the percentage of people we graduate from college. Think of that. To be absolutely, completely accurate, we're tied with 5 other nations for 9th in the world in the percentage of people we graduate. If I had said that at the University of Vermont with George Jenkins standing here, he would have found it unbelievable that could happen. Ladies and gentlemen, the overall result, we lost 8 million jobs. Nothing done to staunch the bleeding. Before I lowered my right hand on that magnificent January day, before over 1 million people in the mall with a sense of hope and expectation and anxiety on their face, we lost 750,000 jobs in the first 20 days of January. Our economy shrank at 7% the last quarter. Let me translate that. That's $3 trillion of America's wealth, your wealth. $3 trillion. It was not transferred, it evaporated. It was lost. 100 of it, just in our housing in this country. That's you. Most middle-class Americans, the single greatest asset they have is their home. They relied upon it. They were going to retire on it. Or they were going to do what I did, borrow on it to send my kids to college. And all of a sudden, he was gone. They watched their 401ks evaporate. Many of you saw them evaporate before your eyes. Those who are old enough to have acquired them. Remember we were talking about the stock market was going to fall below 6,000 from 14,000? No wonder people are angry. And because of 2 wars, a prescription drug benefit, and a tax cut to the ultra wealthy, they put it all on our credit card of our kids. I want to remind you, people forget this. They did not pay 1 single solitary penny. When I introduced legislation to the Senator with Pat's help, trying to get us to pay for the war so we wouldn't hand it to our children, they all voted against it. They never put a penny for any war or the prescription drug benefit, which is $600 billion, or the tax cut in anything other than what they call a continuing resolution. They wouldn't even count it in their budget. And these guys have the nerve to talk about balancing budget. Your opponent, a George Bush Republican, is talking about balancing your budget. He asked it constitutionally. But ladies and gentlemen, they have no credibility. None. I remind you, Ronald Reagan left us with a gigantic deficit. George I left us with a gigantic deficit. George II made them both look like pikers. Before I got a chance